Zero trust security has come to dominate cybersecurity strategy discussions, especially in light of the White House executive order on cybersecurity. Agencies have been busy rationalizing their zero trust strategies and their access and identity management capabilities as the work from anywhere model has become the new norm. Meanwhile, organizations are also now exploring the next level of zero trust architectures and looking for ways to enhance data protection practices on data going to the clouds, from the clouds, and between clouds. I'm Wyatt Cash on behalf of CyberScoop, and here to talk further about that is Justin Hodges, Integrated Product Team Lead, Cybersecurity Services Provider at the Naval Information Warfare Center Atlantic. Justin, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So let me start by asking, how are you and how's your agency approaching the goal of treating data as a strategic asset? And maybe more specifically, how are you leveraging or planning to leverage zero trust architecture and framework models to protect your data as it traverses from device to cloud and cloud to cloud?
Yeah, hey, thanks. Great question. So when we talk about treating data as a strategic asset, one of the things that we do is we don't just talk about it, right? So talk is cheap when it comes to policies and buzzwords like treating data as a strategic asset. And so what we have to do is first figure out what our most critical data is and then figure out how to protect it. The other thing we need to do is take a look at what data we're collecting from a strategic standpoint and focus on collecting those things, those pieces of data that actually drive decisions. So data storage, retention, collection, all of those things can get very pricey, very complicated, very quickly. And so in order to manage it in a bite-sized, achievable form, focus on the data that you need, and that data that you need is the ones that drive decision. As far as zero trust architecture, so there's a lot out there, and some of it's good, some of it's bad when it comes to zero trust architecture. There's a lot of framework and models, and that's really what zero trust is. It's a methodology, right? So it's not a solution you can just go out and buy something and magically you're going to have zero trust architecture. It's really about a new paradigm approach to how we do network security, going away with exceptions and trusted devices, trusted users, and really trusting nothing and validating those connections. And so really, from an approach standpoint, it's all about not baking in exceptions, right? So it's about looking at all of your network topology, the networks that your networks connect to, and whittling it down so that there is no trust or trust is minimalized within your network architecture as well as to other partner networks that you're connected to. And so, like all things security-wise, that methodology has to be tailored to your architecture, to your network host, monitoring capabilities, and then, of course, balanced against what your mission and your availability needs are. One of the things that we encounter in cybersecurity a lot is the perception. To some degree, it's true, right, that cybersecurity exists to make things harder, and in reality, cybersecurity exists to make things more secure while allowing the mission to be successful. So it's a trade-off, and one that requires frequent interaction and discussion at senior levels and functional levels.
Well, and then thinking about how zero trust and endpoint security intersect, how has endpoint security evolved around users' own devices, that sort of bring your own device concept, and government furnished equipment? And how's that evolved over the last 12 months or so to coincide with zero trust practices? And if you would, how are you seeking to better secure data under these types of endpoint security models?
Yeah, so great question. So a lot has happened, especially with COVID-19 push to maximize telework and remote work. Several years ago, talking about bring your own devices or BYOD was really something that, maybe super special units got to do, but those of us didn't. And so where it comes to zero trust architecture, the old, single unified paradigm of looking at the endpoint security, zero trust, and government or organizational furnished equipment was, I don't want to make it sound simple. It was not, right? But it was a known quantity, right? And so the paradigm shifted with the advent of bring your own device. And so like a lot of things, we're still analyzing how to best leverage bring your own device. And there's a lot of new opportunities that are being tested and piloted in a lot of different places. But really, when it comes to evaluating the difference between GFE versus, say, a bring your own device, it's what you can monitor, and particularly what you can trust, what you shouldn't trust, and segregating those things that are sensitive on the network from those that are not trusted. And those things that are sensitive would include your data repositories, and that's how that dovetails into your treating data as a strategic asset and protecting data.
Well, that certainly makes sense. And then perhaps last, Justin, let me just briefly ask, the supply chain attack involving SolarWinds about a year ago that compromised government and commercial IT networks really highlighted the ability for hackers to compromise certificates or root of trust between products and, move undetected across an enterprise. So what advice would you offer to organizations to protect their data from, an apparent trusted user in this case? And are user behavior analytics and policies enough to really defend against these advanced insider threats?
Yeah, also, great question. Probably my favorite question that you've asked so far. We have to think about trusted users as a paradigm, or as two different paradigms. So in one case, there's trusted users who probably or perhaps should not be trusted and can do criminal things or things that they're not supposed to do. And then there are sophisticated malicious cyber actors who masquerade as trusted insiders for nefarious purposes. There's a lot of different technologies that are out there, user activity monitoring, user behavior analytics that are used to baseline those things. Ultimately, when it comes to protecting and monitoring and defending against trusted insiders, whether or not that's an actual trusted insider or an outsider masquerading as a trusted insider, user behavior analytics, or UBA, as well as UEM, can be incredibly helpful at combating that. But I would go so far as to say they're not a panacea, right? They're not you can go out and procure the solutions in and of themselves. Procuring the software, configuring the software, figuring out how to leverage it and monitor it and program it are major steps along the road. But the DoD has counter insider threat programs. The digital aspect, user activity monitoring, user behavior analytics are just parts of the component or cogs within the machine. They're not all of it. So they're not robust enough of themselves to defend against it, but when paired with other monitoring capabilities and programs, it can be successful.
Well, certainly a big task, no matter how you look at it. Either way, Justin Hodges, thank you so much for taking just a few minutes with us to, kind of share some of your thoughts about protecting data as it moves to the clouds, from the clouds, and between the clouds.
Sure, my pleasure, Wyatt. Thank you for having me.